Vanessa didn't knock the first time she crossed my threshold. She simply pushed the front door open, marching into my living room like a real estate agent inspecting a distressed property. My son Liam trailed behind her, carrying her oversized designer bag, looking more like an assistant than a fiancé. I sat in my favorite armchair, sipping my morning coffee, watching the spectacle unfold. I had lived in this house for 30 years. It was modest, comfortable, filled with oak furniture and memories of my late husband. Vanessa stopped in the center of the rug, her eyes darting across my floral curtains and the brick fireplace. She wrinkled her nose. "Liam, you didn't tell me it was so vintage," she remarked, trailing a manicured finger along the edge of my bookshelf. "Mom likes it this way," Liam mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I placed my mug on the coaster. "Welcome, Vanessa. Can I get you some tea?" She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh no, I only drink matcha. Anyway, we need to talk about this space. If we're going to be hosting Sunday dinners here after the wedding, this whole layout has to change. That sofa is incredibly depressing." I didn't argue. I didn't defend my furniture. I just observed. My son, the boy I raised to be respectful and kind, simply nodded along with her. He didn't defend his childhood home. He just nervously adjusted his collar. Without asking, Vanessa walked into my kitchen and began opening cabinets. I heard the distinct clatter of my favorite ceramic bowls being shuffled around. "These have to go," she called out. Too cluttered. I stood up, smoothed my trousers, and walked into the kitchen. I calmly took the bowl from her hands, placed it back on the shelf, and closed the cabinet door. "You can decorate your own home, however you like, Vanessa," I replied, keeping my voice perfectly level. "But this is my kitchen." She blinked, clearly unaccustomed to being told no. A tight, artificial smile stretched across her face. "Just trying to help Beatrice. You're clearly stuck in the past." She turned on her heel and walked back to the living room. Liam finally looked at me, giving a weak, apologetic shrug. But a shrug wasn't enough. As I watched them leave that afternoon, I noticed my spare key, the one I kept under the porch planter, was missing. I didn't call Liam to demand the key back. I didn't cry over his disrespect or text Vanessa an angry paragraph. The very next morning, I picked up the phone and hired a local locksmith. By noon, every deadbolt on my front and back doors had been replaced with high-security locks. 2 days later, the inevitable happened. I was sitting at my kitchen island reading the Sunday paper when the front door handle rattled. Then came the sound of metal scraping against metal. A few seconds of silence were followed by an irritated knock. I took my time folding the newspaper. I walked to the door and pulled it open. Vanessa stood on my porch, holding a brown paper bag, a scowl deepening the lines on her forehead. Liam stood behind her, looking confused. "Your lock is jammed," Vanessa snapped, holding up my old spare key. "I came to clear out the pantry. I bought some organic staples for you." I looked at the key in her hand, then at my son. "The lock isn't jammed. It's new." Liam stepped forward, his face flushing. "Mom, why would you change the locks? I gave Vanessa the spare so she could come help you out." "I don't need help with my pantry, Liam," I answered, leaning against the door frame. "And you don't give out keys to my home without asking me first. That is a basic boundary." Vanessa crossed her arms, dropping the grocery bag onto the porch chair. "Wow. We're just trying to include you in our lives, Beatrice. If you want to isolate yourself and be stubborn, fine. Let's go, Liam." She expected him to apologize to her. Instead, Liam looked at me pleadingly. "Mom, come on. Just give us a new key. Don't make this a big deal." "It isn't a big deal." I smiled politely. "You knock when you visit, just like everyone else." I closed the door, listening to Vanessa's muffled complaints as they walked back to their car. My heart beat a little faster, but my hands were steady. I knew right then this wasn't just about a key. Vanessa was testing the waters, pushing the fences to see how easily they would fall. She was about to find out that my fences were made of steel. The tension simmered for a week before Liam invited himself over for dinner. He arrived alone, which usually meant he wanted something. I served roast chicken and mashed potatoes, keeping the conversation light, waiting for the inevitable pivot. It happened right after dessert. So Vanessa and I were looking at the wedding budget. Liam began staring at his fork. Her parents are covering the flowers, but the venue and catering are a lot. We were hoping you could handle that part. It's around $40,000. I took a slow sip of my water. $40,000. That was a significant chunk of my retirement savings money my late husband and I had worked decades to secure. I'm happy to contribute, Liam, I replied smoothly. I have set aside $5,000 for your wedding. You can use it for whatever vendor you choose. His head snapped up. $5,000, Mom, that barely covers the photographer. Dad left you plenty of money. Vanessa knows you have the savings. My savings are for my future, my medical care, and my peace of mind. I clarified, holding his gaze. $5,000 is my gift. I suggest you scale back the venue. He left in a huff. The next afternoon, I accidentally left my digital voice recorder, the one I used to dictate grocery lists and reminders, on the coffee table when I went out to check the mail and chat with a neighbor. Liam and Vanessa had dropped by to talk and were waiting in the living room. When I returned, they were gone, leaving a note that they couldn't wait. Curious, I pressed play on the little black device. At first, there was only rustling. Then, Vanessa's voice echoed from the tiny speaker, sharp and cruel. She's completely useless, Liam. Hoarding that money in this rundown house. Just drop it, Van. She won't budge. Oh, she will, Vanessa sneered. Once we're married, we're moving in here. We'll push her to sell to us cheap, or we'll just stick her in that budget retirement facility on 4th Street. The one that smells like bleach. She won't have a choice once we take over the finances. I sat perfectly still. The house felt suddenly cold. My own son had just murmured, "Yeah, whatever it takes," in response. I didn't shed a single tear. Instead, I grabbed my purse and my car keys. I had an appointment to make at the bank. The bank teller, a sweet woman named Sarah, smiled as I sat across from her desk. "Hi, Beatrice. How can we help you today?" "I need to make some administrative changes," I stated, pulling my ID from my wallet. "I want Liam's name removed as the secondary on my emergency fund. I also need to update my beneficiaries on all accounts." Sarah typed away, asking no intrusive questions. Within 20 minutes, Liam's access to my financial safety net was completely severed. If they thought they were going to slowly drain me, they were severely mistaken. I walked out of the bank feeling a profound sense of lightness. When I got home, I didn't confront them. I didn't call Liam to scream or demand an apology. Arguing with greedy people only gives them a chance to gaslight you. I preferred the element of surprise. For the next month, I played my part perfectly. I attended the dress fittings, sitting quietly in the corner while Vanessa ignored me. I listened to her complain about the measly $5,000 I had transferred to them, smiling politely and offering no further cash. I even bought a small, discreet digital frame for the living room. It looked like it displayed a slideshow of family photos, but it also had a motion-activated audio recording feature. Every time they came over to help me with chores, which usually meant Vanessa snooping through my mail and Liam raiding the fridge, the frame captured their whispers. "Did you find the deed?" "No, she must keep it in a safe. Whatever she's getting, forgetful anyway. We'll just tell her she promised us the house." It was a masterclass in betrayal. But with every recording, my resolve hardened. I wasn't a victim waiting to be rescued. I was the architect of my own peace, and it was time to finalize the blueprints. Then came the invitation. Vanessa called, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Beatrice, we'd love for you to host the engagement dinner." We booked the Lakeside Pavilion. You just need to show up and cover the dinner tab. It's the least you can do. I smiled at the wall. Of course, Vanessa. I'll handle everything. The Lakeside Pavilion was a beautiful venue run by an old friend of my late husband, Arthur. Arthur was a wizard, with audio-visual equipment having spent his youth running sound for local bands. I drove to the pavilion 3 days before the dinner, carrying a flash drive in my purse. Arthur met me at the front door, wiping his hands on a rag. "Beatrice?" "It's been too long," he grinned. "I got the menu sorted just like you asked. Modest, elegant, already paid in full." "Thank you, Arthur," I replied. "But I have one more favor to ask. It involves the projector screen behind the head table." I handed him the small silver flash drive. We sat in his office for an hour, reviewing the files I had meticulously organized. No lawyers were needed to prove a point. No police to arrest anyone for being terrible human beings. Just raw, unfiltered reality. Arthur listened to the audio clips, his eyebrows raising higher with each one. When it finished, he looked at me, shaking his head. "You sure about this, B? It's going to burn some bridges. Those bridges are already rotten." "Arthur," I answered calmly, "I'm just clearing the debris." The morning of the dinner, Vanessa sent me a text. "Make sure you wear something appropriate tonight. Nothing too dowdy. And don't talk to my uncle about your gardening, please." I didn't reply. I went to my closet and pulled out a stunning, deep sapphire dress I hadn't worn in years. I styled my hair, put on my favorite pearl necklace, and looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a tired old widow waiting to be shoved into a nursing home. I looked like a woman who owned her life. I arrived at the venue early. The tables were set with crisp white linens and silver centerpieces. I took my seat at a small table, slightly off to the side, exactly where Vanessa had assigned me, far from the spotlight, just the way I wanted it. Guests started filtering in by 7 o'clock. Vanessa's family arrived in loud, boisterous groups, wearing designer labels and complaining about the parking. Liam walked in, looking exhausted, trailing behind Vanessa, who was working the room like a politician seeking votes. She spotted me and strutted over a glass of champagne in her hand. "Well, you actually dressed up," she remarked, looking me up and down. "I guess it's acceptable. Just remember, don't make a scene tonight. Let my parents do the talking." "I plan on being very quiet," I assured her, taking a sip of my sparkling water. Dinner was served. The room buzzed with laughter and the clinking of silverware. I watched my son. He laughed at his future father-in-law's jokes, eagerly seeking approval from a family that barely respected him. I felt a pang of sorrow, but it vanished quickly. I had done my job as a mother. His choices as a man were his own. As the dessert plates were cleared, the lights dimmed slightly. It was time for the speeches. Vanessa's father gave a long, boastful speech about his daughter's achievements. Then Vanessa stood up. She wore a dazzling white cocktail dress, the center of attention, holding a microphone. She thanked her parents, her friends, and the catering staff. Then she turned her gaze toward my table in the corner. Her smile dropped. The fake sweetness melted away, replaced by a cold, calculating sneer. She had had a few glasses of wine, enough liquid courage to reveal her true colors in front of her loyal audience. She thought I was powerless. She thought I was already beaten. And of course we have to mention Liam's mother, Vanessa, announced, her voice ringing through the speakers. The room grew quiet. "You know, Beatrice, we're moving forward into a bright future. A future that doesn't really have room for dead weight." Liam shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but said nothing. Vanessa leaned into the microphone. "Let's be honest. You've disgusted me since day one." A collective gasp echoed through the room. Someone dropped a fork. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, looked up at the tech booth, and nodded to Arthur. The massive projector screen behind Vanessa suddenly dropped down from the ceiling with a mechanical hum. Vanessa frowned, turning around, clearly irritated that her dramatic moment was being interrupted. "Who turned that on?" she snapped. Then the video started playing. There were no pictures, just a stark black screen with bold white subtitles accompanied by crystal clear audio. "She's completely useless, Liam. Hoarding that money in this rundown house." Vanessa's own voice blasted through the pavilion's state-of-the-art surround sound system. She froze in horror. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Just drop it, Van. She won't budge." Liam's voice followed, echoing across the silent dining room. "Oh, she will. Once we're married, we're moving in here. We'll push her to sell to us cheap, or we'll just stick her in that budget retirement facility on 4th Street. The one that smells like bleach." The guests stared at the screen, wide-eyed. Vanessa's mother put a hand over her mouth. Her father looked furiously between his daughter and Liam. The screen shifted to a new slide, a screenshot of a text message Vanessa had sent Liam a week ago, blown up to 10 feet tall. "Tell the old bat to pay for the florist too. She won't need the cash where she's going. Turn it off." Vanessa shrieked, dropping the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening screech of feedback. "Liam, do something." Liam jumped up, his face pale, waving his arms at the ceiling. "Stop! Hey!" Cut the sound. But Arthur was locked safely inside the tech booth. The recording continued. "Did you find the deed? No. She must keep it in a safe. Whatever she's getting forgetful anyway. We'll just tell her she promised us the house." Every ugly word, every greedy plot laid bare for her family and friends to hear. I sat calmly at my table, watching the chaos unfold. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was simply letting them hang themselves with their own rope. The video ended with a simple, quiet click. The screen rolled back up into the ceiling. The silence in the room was absolute, heavier than stone. Vanessa's father was the first to move. He stood up, threw his napkin onto the table, and glared at Liam. "Is this a joke to you? Plotting to steal from your own mother, Mr. Davis? Please, it's out of context." Liam stammered, sweating profusely. "Let's go, Mr. Davis," commanded his wife. Without another glance at their daughter, they walked out the front doors of the pavilion. Half the room followed suit, grabbing their coats in embarrassed silence. Vanessa was hyperventilating, staring at me with pure venom. She stomped over to my table, her fists clenched. "You crazy old witch! You ruined my engagement dinner." I finally stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I didn't ruin anything, Vanessa," I replied smoothly. "I just let everyone hear exactly who you are." Liam rushed over, grabbing Vanessa's arm. "Mom, how could you do this? Why would you embarrass us like this? Embarrass you?" I chuckled softly. "You plotted to steal my home and shove me into a facility. You surrendered your right to my respect the moment you agreed to her plan." I reached into my purse and pulled out a crisp white envelope. I handed it to Liam. He took it with shaking hands. "What is this?" he whispered. "That is the spare key you gave her, which no longer works," I explained, along with a voided check for the $5,000 I offered for this wedding. "I won't be financing my own replacement." Vanessa swatted at the envelope. "We don't need your money. We'll get the house eventually anyway." I looked her dead in the eye. "No, you won't. I updated my will last week. Everything goes to charity. You get nothing." Liam looked utterly broken. "Mom, you can't mean that. We were just talking. We wouldn't have actually done it." "Actions speak louder than words." "Liam," I answered, picking up my clutch. "And my action is this. You are not welcome in my house anymore. Do not come by. Do not call asking for favors." Vanessa scoffed, trying to maintain her arrogant facade, though her voice shook. "Fine. We don't want anything to do with you anyway. Enjoy dying alone in that dusty old house." "I intend to," I smiled. It's incredibly peaceful without you in it. I turned my back on them and walked toward the exit. I didn't look back to see them arguing with the remaining bewildered guests. I didn't care to watch Vanessa try to salvage her ruined reputation. Arthur was waiting near the coat check. He handed me my shawl with a small, knowing smile. "Brilliant execution, B," he murmured. "Thank you for your help, Arthur. Send the final bill to my home address." On the house, he winked. I walked out into the cool evening air. The parking lot was half empty, the gravel crunching satisfyingly under my heels. I got into my car, started the engine, and turned on the radio. A classic jazz tune floated through the speakers. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel tight. The anxiety of having an enemy inside my own walls was gone. I drove home through the quiet streets, watching the streetlights flicker past, feeling incredibly alive. When I unlocked my front door, my new secure front door, the house felt different. It didn't feel like a museum waiting to be looted. It felt like a fortress. My fortress. 6 months passed. I never received an invitation to the wedding. From what I heard through the neighborhood grapevine, Vanessa's parents refused to pay for the lavish event after the dinner fiasco. They ended up having a small courthouse ceremony. Liam tried to call twice. Both times I let it go to voicemail. He left rambling apologies blaming stress and Vanessa's influence, asking if we could move past this. I deleted the messages. Apologies mean nothing when the boundary has already been shattered. If I let him back in, it would only be a matter of time before the cycle repeated. Instead of dwelling on it, I took action for myself. I realized the big house was a bit much for me to maintain alone, but I didn't sell it to fund their lifestyle. I sold it on my terms in a booming market and bought a beautiful sunlit condominium overlooking a local park. I furnished it exactly how I wanted. No vintage heavy oak, but sleek, comfortable modern pieces. I painted the walls a warm terracotta. I bought expensive ceramic bowls and drank my coffee out of them every single morning. I joined a local gardening club and started taking pottery classes. I traveled to Italy with a group of women my age, drinking wine and laughing loudly in crowded piazzas. One afternoon, sitting on my new balcony watering my orchids, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Beatrice, it's Vanessa. Liam lost his job. We really need a loan to cover rent this month. Please." I stared at the screen. I felt no anger, no pity, no urge to argue. I didn't owe them a response, let alone my hard-earned money. With a calm, steady finger, I pressed the block button. I put my phone down, picked up my watering can, and smiled. The sun was shining, my plants were thriving, and my life was entirely, wonderfully my own.